Today I'd like to talk about pace. There's been an awful lot of media attention to the fact that schools are going back tomorrow. Firstly, let me just say they haven't actually been shut. Schools have been open for the children of key workers throughout. They've also been open for children with education, health and care plans, EHCPs. So schools hadn't actually been shut. Also, as part of this, while schools haven't been open to all, teachers have still been working. Some of them have been doing a rotation of going into school, so different teachers going to school at different times. There might be a week on and then a few weeks and then they're back on again. But also there's been homeschooling going on where teachers have been feeding into that. So teachers have had to be finding new ways of presenting their lessons in a way that they can do remotely. So teachers have actually been very busy, and I think it's unfair to consider that teachers have been sitting around doing nothing for the last few months. For some they've been busier than ever. There have been SENCOs are special educational needs coordinators, who have been using it as a chance to actually get a lot of the paperwork up to date that's really hard to keep on top of, and just loads of work going on behind the scenes that we don't necessarily hear about through the media. I hear a lot about it because I tutor SENCOs on the Masters and leaders doing the MPQs. I've taught at university. There's all sorts of things I'm doing, which means I'm in touch with a lot of teachers, SENCOs, head teachers and so on. So these people in education haven't been sitting around doing nothing for the last few months, so I want to clear that up. Also, as schools reopen, they don't reopen for everyone. There are only key year groups going in, so it's not everything back to normal tomorrow. And another thing about that is we haven't got a full take-up of this. There are a lot of children who will not be going back to school, even though they are entitled to go back to school. They're permitted to go back to school tomorrow, because what's happening is sometimes it might be that a family have got several children, and to have one of them going back could be quite disruptive. It could be that the family themselves feel quite vulnerable, and the idea of a child going back to school and potentially bringing something back into the house could be a difficulty. There could be loads of reasons why children aren't. Some parents still feel it's not time. Others have felt that their children have benefited from the space of being home educated, and they actually want to give them that little bit more time, start again afresh maybe in September. So there's various reasons why there isn't a complete take-up, far from it. Also, some schools have looked at their situation and realised actually we can't open up as we're being advised to by the government, because we are such a small school. There's no way we can do that in a way that allows for social distancing. There's all sorts of reasons why some schools are unable to fully open up in the way that they are anticipated to do so. So it's not as simple as schools are going back. Okay, that's the first thing. The other thing is that in addition, one more before I move on, also staffing. There are teachers who cannot go back to school because they're still having to shield. So they're not necessarily at full staffing as well. So it is very complicated, and the child-teacher ratio is going to be different. So that is a huge issue. Also, I wanted to mention that this isn't unique, okay? There are lots of reasons why children may have had their education interrupted. It could be through illness, it could be through travel, that's something in the family, they need to do some travel and they've had a few months where they've been unable to settle their children into a school while they do that. All sorts of reasons people's education does get interrupted. In the long term, that isn't always an issue. It depends on how it's managed and what's being done in the meantime for those children. The thing about pace is that this needs to take time. There's a lot of talk about catch-up. I'm hearing a lot of concern about the talk about catch-up from, as I say, SENCOs, teachers, head teachers. There's an awful lot of people very worried about this urge to suddenly catch everybody up, because that is going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on all sorts of people, and it doesn't take into account what's been happening over the past few months. So I feel very strongly that people need to take time. There are lessons we have learned from this whole lockdown situation. If we rush to just catch up, we're going to undo an awful lot of potential good that could come out of this. And we don't want to rush in and waste an opportunity. I'm very much an optimist. I believe things can be turned into opportunities. And this could be an opportunity for reassessing where we are, re-examining how we go forwards, and also for changing the way we do things. So we need to take time. There's been an awful lot of stress around. And when people are under stress, they don't learn. We need to calm that down. So they need to come in, and instead of being catch up, it needs to be sharing the experiences they've had. There needs to be time to tell the stories of what has been happening and what they see happening in the future. What do they see as their needs as they come back to school? What do the teachers see? What do the pupils see? What do our children see as the needs they have? What is it that they've benefited from, and what have they felt that they've lost? Priorities will have changed all around, but to minimise the stress, people are going to be coming into a very unfamiliar environment. The school will look different. That's going to happen because of social distancing. But also the people they encounter will be different. Some of the teachers they'll be expecting to see won't necessarily be there. They may have to be off to self-isolate still. Some of the children, they're looking forward to meeting their friends. Oh great, haven't seen so-and-so for so long. Oh, they were in a year group that wasn't coming back. They're not coming back yet. There will need to be sensitivities about who has experienced what. We know that a lot of people have died. So when people come back, we can't just assume that their lives at home have been the same as they were when we last saw them 3 months ago. Now the schools have been very busy keeping in touch with their parents and their children. There's a lot of welfare calls going on. So the schools are likely to know these things, but we need to prepare our children for changes that will have happened. People will have lost loved ones. And that needs to be addressed. It can't just be ignored in order to catch up with the lost curriculum. So the other thing is that people will be in different places with their learning. So some people will have, I've said this before, been what we call hothoused. They will have been working very hard academically in all the time they've been off. They might be pretty exhausted if that's been the case. Others may not have looked at academia at all. They may have been doing things, learning. I'm not saying they won't have been learning, but they'll have been learning by going on walks, by doing things in the garden, by doing projects at home, by cooking, by exercising, by doing creative artwork. They may have learned informally. They may have followed a project of their own interest. So they will all be in different places and at different paces. Our places and paces will be different. Some children, as I say, will be used to intense work, others to a much more relaxed pace. To then put them into this fast-paced, move it, catch up situation will benefit no one. So we need to take time to see where everyone is at and to rebuild the ability to cope with a school day. It's an opportunity for that school day to look very different, for that school day to include places and spaces for thought, for relaxation, for calm, for oneness with nature, if our school grounds permit. The other thing, of course, is socialising. We've all been socialising very differently. I've been in touch with my children and my grandchildren, my baby grandchildren, through Zoom, through WhatsApp video, through Skype. I haven't seen them, I haven't held them, I haven't touched them for over 3 months. So the way we socialise is different. We might have an instinct to want to go up and hug people, but we're not allowed to. So we have to think of new ways. These are big deals, big issues. So we need to think about how we socialise. For some people, they will have seen and heard from no one in that time, other than the people in their actual household. To then be faced with people in the playground, albeit fewer than if everybody had gone back at once, that will be very daunting. And there will be fear around that. There will be discomfort around that. In the same way as we teach reception, nursery kids, reception kids, year 1 kids, how to socialise, we actually actively teach those skills and put them in situations where they can gradually learn and acquire these skills. We will need to do that for all ages. You know, there will be teenagers who have been, before they went into lockdown, everything was about fashion and sort of how they looked. There could have been things like that that suddenly became totally irrelevant during lockdown, and they had a shift in priorities, and then they're back with their social group. How do I deal with that? The same is true for young children. If they haven't had to share, they have to learn how to share. If they haven't had to take turn, they have to relearn how to take turn. If they've had undivided attention, they've suddenly got to share attention. So there's a lot of relearning needing to take place when it comes to socialising. There's also the people for whom they've been in families where they've been, as I say, just like that, very much self-isolating. For some of them, there's a real fear about leaving the house. I heard today on the radio 2 people speaking about they've been in total lockdown, so hadn't been outside the house for 12 weeks. And there was a nervousness about physically stepping outside that front door because they hadn't done it for 12 weeks. People who are used to being in crowd, suddenly they're not. And there's a fear of the noise of a crowd. There's just a fear of seeing so many people in one place. We've all been very patient, very separate, very paced. To come back into it, we need to do that in a very careful, paced, measured way. We need to be aware that also this is stressful for our teachers. It's not just new for our children, it's new for our teachers. Our teachers have been engaging with new technologies. You know, for some they have never done video conferencing, video meetings, Skype, Zoom, all these things are new to them. You know, there's Teams, there's Meet, there's Zoom, there's all sorts of platforms, Blackboard, Collaborate. You know, I first learned how to use those things when lockdown started because I was due to give a lecture, and it was like, gosh, I've never had to host something like this before, and suddenly I had to. Blackboard, Collaborate, there I was delivering a lecture. Very different. I had to learn how to do it. Learned fast. We're all learning fast. But that means they've been very pressured. They're going to come back in to another change yet again. Having just learned one change, school isn't going to look the same. They're going to be teaching in smaller groups. They're going to be teaching different year groups possibly from ones they've had before. It's all going to feel very different. And for some of those teachers, they will have been in total isolation. Some of those teachers live alone, won't have seen anybody for 12 weeks. So we need to think about all of this. We need to take it slowly. We need to give care, patience and time to ensure that this happens in a way that is positive for everybody's mental health and their whole growing as a person. We want to move forwards gently. We do not want to just do this whole catch up. That could be incredibly damaging. Let's take it slowly. Let's look at where we're going, and let's put the needs of each other, of our children, of our teachers, and of the parents who will also be very worried about letting their children go back to school. We need to think about all those things and put those first ahead of catching up with what might have been missed. There's time for that. Let's make time for each other. Thank you.